Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow as well as the season finale of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of Arrow, you can skip to what I had to say about the season finale of Legion. But first off, let's talk about this week's episode of Arrow. Episode picks up right where last week's episode left off, with Oliver saying, like, yeah, I'm done with all of this. And as you would expect in typical Oliver fashion, he pushes everyone away. But then, Diggle's kind of like, nah, I'm not believing this. Obviously, Oliver's always had these moments where he kind of doubts himself and beats himself up. But Felicity was like, nah, this time it seems different. She's never seen Oliver like this. I mean, it's to the point Oliver couldn't even bring himself to look any of them in the eye. Curtis, Diggle, even Felicity, you definitely saw it then where he's just kind of looking away. He couldn't even stare her in the face because of what Adrian made him realize. I mean, to the point that Adrian was tempting him by like putting a knife in front of him and be like, take me down, go ahead. And he's like, but the fact is that Oliver wouldn't. He's like, that's so disappointing. He's like, if you want to, go ahead and keep the knife. I mean, obviously, everyone is so adamant about keeping, everyone's like, no, Oliver's going to snap back to it soon enough. Diggle is in particular saying this. So it's like, at the very least, what we got to do is deal with Adrian. I mean, what was kind of interesting about this episode, too, is that they kind of had to go low grade. They didn't even have a lot of their equipment or, their, when they suit up and everything, because everything was stuck in the facility. Like, basically, Oliver locked them all out, left their equipment and their costume, so they kind of had to like cover up most of their face and just kind of wear black suits and everything to kind of hide their identities and everything, kind of, because it's like not even just Adrian, we still have a city protecting. Even if Oliver's not quite there right in the head yet to kind of deal with this whole situation, it still doesn't change the fact that this city needs us to help protect it. They even had to get weapons from Argus to help out. It makes you wonder, how does Lila kind of get, because I feel like she's running Argus, so maybe she doesn't really have to answer to people. I mean, it's like, I kind of give you these weapons on the side. It does beg that question, because it's like, Argus is like a government organization, so I feel like she definitely has people to answer to. I don't think it's a private organization. I think it's a government, definitely a government funded one, so I was, like I said, not unless she gives them the guns like low key or something like that. That's the only explanation. I feel like you'd have to answer to like giving guns to people like that, especially like not Argus related people. So, but the situation got complicated when Oliver brings Anatoly into the equation. He lets Anatoly steal some diabetic medicine for the sake of, that's kind of the down payment for killing Adrian, because it's like, for him, it's like the only way he can get this done, because as he is now, he can't go after Adrian, because that would, he just won't, it's not like he can go after him as an Arrow. I mean, as Green Arrow can't go after him as himself, because he is the mayor. So he's in a very tight spot. And then you have like Diggle finding out about this, and he's like, no, you can't go after him this way. Which, surprisingly enough, you have Felicity being like, no, we've been chasing Adrian for a while. How about we just maybe we shouldn't stop Oliver. It's kind of Diggle's the only one thinking here, because, it's like, this isn't a way to handle this situation, because as we know, like, Oliver wanted to stop killing people, but he's so angry, he's so mad at everything that Adrian stands for. He's like, because, Adrian's killed and hurt a lot of people. And it's just kind of like, he wants him gone, because for him, Adrian's also a reminder of who he is, because it's like, he even tells Diggle, he's like, the truth is, Adrian reminded me that I'm a killer. He's like, the reason why I'm pushing you guys away, because I don't want you to be part of this. I started this with a lie, that basically I created this crusade of like, oh, we're fighting for the future of Starling City / Star City, but it was all for the sake of me, so I could have an excuse to kill. I'm not going to have you guys fight a battle over like a false crusade. It's like, if anyone's soul is going to get dragged through the mud, it's mine. I'm beyond redemption. You guys aren't. You still have your lives ahead of you. But Diggle kind of brings it up later on, because he ends up interfering with Anatoly going after Adrian. They went as far as protecting him, because it's like, the moment this is all said and done, because Diggle's like, the moment it's said and done, Oliver will regret this later on. And so for him, Diggle, he explains it to Oliver. The fact is, Oliver gave him that choice. Like, after killing Andy, obviously he went to joined the military, and when he got betrayed, he was willing to rot away in jail because he felt like that was the only way he was going to pay for what he did. Because it's a situation with for one, he couldn't live with what he did. He killed someone when he didn't need to, especially the person he loves. That was his brother he killed when he didn't actually have to pull the trigger. He knows that. Because at the same time, you also have to remember when it was all said and done, Lila didn't blame him. She was like, no, you did it for the sake of your family. But it kind of made him question what he was doing even more, because it's like, no, I didn't do it for the sake of my family. I did it just because I wanted to do it. I didn't have to do it. I wanted to do it. Just, and that basically, you could also look at it as maybe it's like, yeah, he might have threatened my family, but at the very least, like, I could have found a way to protect them without going down that route. Like I said, the whole process is like, they don't want to be killers. They want to be heroes. They want to protect what's important to them. That includes the city, and that's everyone that's close to them. But it's like, Oliver told him, hey, if you want to make up for that, you can't do that rotting away in the jail. You put on that suit, you become Spartan again, and you become the man that is redeemable. You live your life making up for it. And he's telling Oliver to do the same thing. If you can't be Green Arrow, if you don't feel like you have the right to suit up as Green Arrow, then become the man who is worthy of bearing, being that symbol of hope, because that's what Green Arrow is supposed to represent, is a symbol of hope. And now, it's a situation where we're constantly seeing Oliver evolve throughout the series. And now, now it turns into a situation where it's like, I think going forward, like, it's always been the separation. As we brought up before, Anatoly was like, oh, you can't live this life keeping the beast, and you separate it. And the point is, for now on, I think it's at least where I'm thinking the series is heading, where Oliver has to, obviously there's the more internal struggle that is, obviously matched by the external struggle of him fighting against Prometheus. I mean, confronting his past, confronting the fact is that he hid behind this mask as a means of unleashing the darkness, giving the darkness inside of him a form. But it's like, no, he's got to fight back and become the hero he needs to be, because he hasn't been the Green Arrow that needs to be there to save Star City. The fact is that he can't and has to find another way to do what he's doing. It's kind of similar to what I've kind of brought up in the 100 as well. The whole concept of like, yeah, you can survive and everything, but can you live with it? So in this particular case, you could go down a certain path of trying to be a quote unquote hero, but the fact of the matter is, will you be able to live with yourself after, when it's all said and done? And that's kind of what Diggle was trying to get across to Oliver in this particular episode, was that very same message. I mean, because it's quite interesting, because we see the opposite of like him and Anatoly have almost switched too, because Anatoly was the more one being like, oh, maybe you shouldn't kill people, you shouldn't do that, kind of don't give into your darkness, because Anatoly's like, oh, like the fact is he spared some of Anatoly's men, and Anatoly's like, back in Russia you would have killed them, and then and then Oliver's like, well, back in Russia you wouldn't have done what you're doing. The fact is putting innocent people's lives in danger, because the fact of the matter is they went out of their way to steal money to get enough money to help people, like back in the day when in Russia, before he's about to leave to go back to Lian, because obviously, being on Lian is a lot easier to explain, than explaining like everything he's done in the past 5 years. But the point is that, and it does seem like that Kovar situation, I mean, at least where this episode ended with that whole flashback situation, makes me think, because he's like, oh, I'm going to leave in 48 hours. Maybe that Kovar situation comes back up, but it seems like that might be even more so connected to this, like I brought up last episode. It just, because the fact is, Adrian has to be well funded. He can't be alone in doing what he's done. The fact that he's able to track down William is like, those take resources, and I feel like you don't. Like, the fact is, living this life you have, do you really have the time and resources to do all that on your own? I feel like Kovar has got to be behind this, especially because he has a tech so that when he took off his mask, because that's what Felicity and Curtis kind of look into this episode, is the fact is he had a scrambler so that when the surveillance camera looked at him, it scrambled his face. But, so I'm very curious to see if that's kind of gets brought in. Last episode too, but I feel it's even more because of that. Obviously, we bring it up. The fact is, it's from a specific tech company, so it could be the fact is that he stole it from that particular tech company, or maybe someone stole it for him, or maybe the person that he's working with, in this particular case, Kovar, is invested in this particular business because he's, hidden his, criminal ties, or maybe the fact is that he uses his criminal ties to get in the position he is to be able to give. Whoops, sorry, did not mean to hit that. To give Adrian the things that he needs. Just a possibility. My thoughts on it, but getting back to it, it's like Anatoly is in a position where it's like he said it in the past. He was like, I don't think I'll be able to not do this job without, because he wanted Oliver to stay, because it's like that position. And even Oliver said it, and I 100% agree. It's like being who he is now makes him no different from Gregor, because it's like, the Bratva, originally he's like, oh, he wanted the Bratva to go back to the way it originally was. That, yes, it's kind of a criminal organization, but it does stuff for the sake of people. When people can't get justice any other way, the Bratva is there to kind of set things right. As during, like, obviously when Oliver's training, like one of the people he was helping that ended up dying other than him, it's like, oh, the bell rung by all of them working together. And then one of the people that, Anatoly and them killed, it turns out he was a murderer. He had killed some innocent woman's son or something like that. So it's like those people involved weren't innocent, and it's that was their way of also getting justice. So, but it seems like that's no longer the case, because in it, like what he was doing with the medication that he stole, is basically he was turning it into drugs to sell, because Anatoly needed to keep his title as leadership, because his leadership was waning, because the fact is that Bratva wasn't making enough profit, and it's like, oh, we're kind of falling under his leadership. So it would have been a situation where someone would have risen up and try to take it from him. So like I said, it's very similar to the whole Gregor situation, and making it seem like that. And Anatoly doesn't like the fact is that he became what he did, but he's like, that's what he tried to warn Oliver before. But then Oliver's like, the fact is, you were my friend. We've been through so much together, from Lee and you to everything that went down in Russia. And the fact is that you were willing to do so much, and now what makes it even more interesting is the fact is we have Oliver at odds with Bratva. It's like the fact is you were once a brother, but I mean, to me, it reflects very nicely with what Chase did last episode, burning away his past, burning away the Bratva symbol on his chest. And now he has to coincide, now he's enemies with the Bratva now, that basically there's no like more turning towards Anatoly for help. And I guess in a way you could also look at that as kind of the right start, because now it's like I think the point is Oliver isn't trying to forget his past, and that's kind of what Anatoly's like, oh, you're forgetting your Bratva past. The fact is your brothers who you promised to be, did I try to put on a Russian accent just then? I think so. Just the way I say brothers and everything just then, I felt like I was like, it just kind of slipped out. That was horrible. Sorry. But, I think, Oliver's not trying to forget his past. You have to remember your past so you don't make the same mistakes again. So Oliver's trying to go down that new path, and he's like, I'm not quite ready to put on becoming Green Arrow again, but soon enough, I'll be the guy that's worthy enough to put that suit on again. I did like the little, like, because of the leadership switch up, you had a situation of like the conversation between Dinah, Renee, and Curtis are like, okay, so obviously Diggle is the new Oliver with this whole new hierarchy. I'm obviously the new Felicity. So which one of you is the new Diggle? And then Dinah and Renee were like, oh yeah, me. They're like, wait, what? Renee's like, really? How are you the new Diggle? You haven't even been around that long. And then she's like, okay, fine. You're the new Diggle. And then Curtis is like, and if you see what she did there, she wasn't petty about it. God, it seemed like the Diggle thing to do. So I thought that was just kind of interesting. I really like their rapport. Like in a short amount of time, it seems like I really like Renee and Dinah. Just like, because was it last episode they did the whole situation? Like she kicked down the door first, and he's like, I think I commented on it too, and he was like, yeah, like, no, next time I'm the one that gets to kick down the door. And she's like, whatever you say. And so it's just like, they have that little relationship, and it's just the small things, the little itty bitty things in the conversation like that. So, but yeah, I'm very interested to see where Oliver goes from here. Cause like this was like the lowest Oliver's ever been before. The fact is like I said, Oliver's always struggled, and that's always been his thing. Like when he is in the most need of people is when he tends to push them away the most. Whether he's 100% willing to like realize it or not. I mean, he even pushed Susan away because he even told Susan, he was like, Prometheus is the monster I created. Adrian's the way he is because of me. So everything he ever did to you was because of me too. So I'm hoping that things between him and Susan can get back together, because him and Susan can work out. I hope. Once again, superheroes. I want my superheroes to be happy. It's like, Barry and Iris are good. Monel and Kara are good. So like, hey, can we get some like Susan and Oliver situation going on? I need it. I need all my superheroes to be happy. It's like, I need them all to be in happy, good relationships. So I think there's still a part of me that is hoping that eventually at some point Oliver and Felicity, but I don't know if that'll ever be a thing again, especially after he kind of killed her boyfriend Billy. So it's like, I don't know. And I'm very interested on that front too. It's like, how will you change everything? I get the feeling like the fact that he's like, oh, I'm gonna put the suit on again. I get the feeling he's going to modify it once again. Because obviously last season, it's changing from the Hood to the Green Arrow. And obviously I get the feeling like he's going to modify it one more time and then like, no, I don't know, like, how are you going to set the record straight? I guess once Adrian's caught, you can make it so that everything's okay. So you can be like, no, it was Adrian. He was behind all of this. We thought it was a Green Arrow, but actually it was Adrian who killed Bill. Technically lie, but, set the record straight. Because we don't even know what Pike's situation is after, Adrian stabbed him and left him in the situation he's in. Because we haven't kind of gone back to that. But another side of the episode kind of switching things up was the whole Felicity working with Helix. And obviously Curtis still has his reservations about it. I still have my reservations about it. I'm like, I don't trust these people. They seem okay. But what got me was like, obviously when Curtis shows up and everything, and they're like, oh yeah, why wouldn't we help out like Overwatch and Mr. Terrific? And they're like, wait, what? And even Felicity, like, what, you knew? They're like, yeah, it didn't take that long to figure out. Which begs the question, if they know about you, does that mean they know about the rest of the team? Most likely know about the rest of the team, which is not a good thing. The fact is that, your identities, especially because it's kind of a pretty pro quo type of situation with Felicity working with them. It's like, oh, you help us out, we'll help you out. Who's to say they won't use this to kind of leverage you in the future? Like I said, like, obviously they seem like an independent thing, but who's to say they don't answer to a higher power? What if they're just a small group of something even bigger? Because it did bring up the fact that they're international. Once again, I can't stress it. There's another group that we know that kind of acts internationally, and that's Hive. And that, because to me, that's what I was thinking, like, because a lot of people are like, oh, season 4 was setting up Hive, so they might be the main antagonist of season 5. But now it's like, well, maybe, obviously Prometheus is the main antagonist, but maybe this will be leading up to them being the main antagonist in season 6 going forward. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how it all goes down once it's all said and done. Like, I just don't trust Helix. I don't know. It's just something about them. It's just like having the access of information that, because it's also the fact is that I feel like on a level they are corrupting Felicity, because Felicity's kind of starting to look at things the same way. In the past, she would have been the most reluctant to be like, let Oliver continue doing what he's doing. Like, she was never really on board with him killing people and everything. And when he changed things up, because it's like, that's the man she eventually fell in love with. And I think she wants to see Oliver like that, because Oliver, as a man that is like not killing people, being an actual hero, not just a killer or vigilante, he inspires not just the city, but inspires the rest of the team. So it's just, I just don't want to see her get corrupted in the sense that she thinks like that as long as they bring down the bad guys, that's all it takes. And it's like, I feel like as the time goes on, the more time she spends with Helix, the more she thinks like that. Granted, I guess because it's a situation where I guess she doesn't see the draw of thinking that way, because thinking that way led Oliver to being in the situation he is now, thinking like whatever means it takes to deal with the problem. It's like, that's how something like Prometheus is created. And who's to say, I might have already said this before, but why not reiterate it here again? It's like, who's to say you won't create a Prometheus of your own doing what you're doing? Like blackmailing people, destroying people's lives, having so much information that you blackmail people. Like, it's almost an endless cycle. And so I hope that she does break away from them soon enough. Well, who knows if there's someone that you can actually leave. Once you're part of Helix, maybe there is no going back. At first, obviously, it was kind of a trial basis to see what, Felicity would do and how long it would take her to decide to 100% work with them. And now we have her doing that. So will it be a situation where when it's all said and done, she'll leave Team Arrow to be with Helix full time and Curtis will have to step up to kind of be more to Felicity once again? Or will it be a situation where I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop? I've been waiting ever since they first popped up. I've been having my reservations about them. So, overall, very good episode. I cannot forget about the ending, though. I did almost let it slip, forget my mind, that Adrian has been outed as Prometheus. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't care. He killed the 2 marshals, and even when it was all said and done, after he killed one of the marshals, he went over and kept punching him repeatedly. He literally driving away covered in blood and whistling it to a song. Like, it shows you how far gone Adrian is, just because I feel like Oliver can't take the blame for everything that is Adrian, because Adrian is responsible for his own actions, just like Oliver is. Sure, he's got to suffer the consequences for what he's done, but, not trying to justify what Oliver's done, but at the very least, he didn't do it. Whether he may have been a killer, and maybe he needed to give himself an outlet, but at the very least, he pointed it in the right direction. That's trying to give it some twisted silver lining, I guess. I'm sure Oliver wouldn't appreciate that. But to me, that's how I see it, where Adrian is just spreading his rage and anger towards everyone. It's like, yeah, it's understandable he's mad at you, but he's willing to kill and destroy so many people simply for the sake of trying to destroy Oliver, And I'm still waiting about this whole Talia situation too, and Evelyn too, where would they stand when this is all said and done too? I hope that they come back, especially her being Artemis. Is kind of like, you kind of have to come back. And also, what about Thea too? Obviously Thea left. I wonder where, man, it just sucks, because, with Thea's particular situation, it's there's always been ups and downs to her life. Obviously, there were plenty of ups and downs when she didn't know the truth, and even when she knows the truth and everything, there's still so many ups and downs. Thought she was good once, Damien Dark kind of got rid of the killer, that lust for blood that she got from the Lazarus pit. But even then, it's still there's kind of a darkness festering in her, because much like Oliver, I think at some point something inside of her kind of broke too, that she feels like she has to do whatever it takes. And Oliver's trying to keep her from going down that path, probably even more so now. So he's got to try and save his, stop. I mean, that's the whole point of her leaving town, was so she could get away, so that she can come back better. I mean, this is kind of the whole reason why she left being Speedy in the first place, because she didn't trust herself. But it will be a little while before we find out what happens next, because much like the other shows, Arrow is going on a little bit of a break too, and will be coming back on April 26th. So. And now moving on to the season finale of Legion. So, a very interesting episode. I appreciate the very, interesting opening, where it's basically the guy, Clark. We kind of got to look at his life ever since, everything went down in the first episode, and he's basically left in the condition. I just love it. It's all this build up of why he's here, how he got here and everything. And it's he's here for his revenge. And in a mere second, I was hoping that they do something like that, where it's just basically David deals with him in a second, and it's he swipes his hand, he literally gathers up all the Division 3 guys, and basically put them in a stack and a pile and everything. And even Clark's kind of well, shit, wasn't expecting that. It's his big plans of revenge, and I'm gonna kill everyone here but leave you alive and everything. But it's nope, dispatched like that. And David's I don't want a war. He wants to fix this whole situation. He wants to kind of make there to be peace. But you have this whole interesting conversation between him and Sid and everything, where it's a conversation of David spent so much time not knowing if he was sane or crazy. Now he has everyone tell him he has powers, and even then he still has a hard time believing he's really a mutant, and these are all powers, that this isn't just all part of his mind. So basically he's I'm sick of, I've always been me. I've been inside my own head, been living with all this for so long. He's I want to help others. At the very least, I guess it's kind of he wants to give himself a purpose. He wants to say even with all my craziness, if I can help do something, that's what I want to do. That's why he's doing this, because he's trying to help others, because he's trying to stop this war between Division 3 as well as the mutants. And for him, he's no. I have to do that, because at least that way it's something other than me. I'm sick of just being caught up in my own drama. I want to help other people. If I have these powers, then at least I can do it. Use that to be the case. But things aren't that easy, because obviously the device is keeping Farouk at bay, but it is slowly powering down. And basically Farouk gets inside of Sid's head, which I like the way Farouk looks as Lenny, and all her skin's kind of there's spots, and just it's got this kind of black gunk. I guess it's kind of representing its blood and everything. It's the moment you got inside of David's head, Sid, is when I got inside of yours. It never crossed my mind that might be a possibility. I mean, it stated it stayed in David's head because it always felt like it was advantageous. But it's like David is Sid's the only person that's ever really gotten inside of David's head. The whole like him creating that world. I felt like that probably would have come back because it did enter that world too on multiple occasions. So I feel like but I'm surprised at the same time it didn't bother getting into anyone else's head. But I guess not because David didn't let down his guard as much around anyone else like he did Sid. So I guess that gave it the opportune time. Because basically it says that it's so entangled with David's mind and everything that if they try and pull it out, David will die with it. So it's either you get me a new body or David's kind of stuck in this situation, which we see basically, obviously they're kicking up the device and everything. And we see him like looking through all these different memories kind of circled around him. And throughout everything that's ever happened in his life that's connected to Farouk, whether it's like, Farouk disguised as Lenny, or Farouk making him use his powers by, making him go crazy, or the fact is, as the angriest boy, the world's angriest boy in the world, stuff like that, things he's used to kind of trick him and everything. We see them kind of flashing and falling away from his mirror. And there's even that one moment where David kind of freezes Farouk and he looks at Lenny, and Lenny's even more decayed than before. Her skin's like grayish pale. And then she's like, I'm not leaving. And it starts strangling David, but at the same time, we see, like, it's really just David strangling himself. Even that moment, like, I thought that was such a creepy moment of just, like, David's, like, in the room, like, in the real world like this. And then you see its hands kind of reaching over and trying to, like, covering him. It's like, that thing's got some big-ass hands. It's just, I never really noticed that. I don't think you ever really, well, I don't know. That was just kind of interesting. They looked all skeleton-y and just, like, could wrap around his entire body. I was like, that's so cool. But it was like interesting how things didn't go down the way I thought. Sid, the fact is Sid ran over and kissed him, obviously activating her powers and giving it her body. Now, because remember because the moment that happened, I was like, what about Sid's whole conversation about the fact is, as long as my soul exists, I don't have to worry about it because my body's just kind of a vessel. The fact is, all that is me is my soul, and that transfers into someone's body. So I was thinking that's where it was going to go. I was like, it was going to stay in Sid's body, but they'd end up having to kill Sid. And the fact is that Sid would have to live on through David, like for the rest of the series or whatever. So he had to balance that. I thought that might have been the direction it went. It didn't, because immediately it switched into Carrie's body, who then kicked other Carrie's ass as well as Potomi's. And there was that thing like, I guess it's more like a psychic bullet because like she did the gun thing towards Melanie, and the moment it went bang, and she ended up falling. So it's not like I was thinking like it'd be like a psychic bullet that actually makes it real, but it's like a psychic bullet that makes you think it's real. But then it was like I loved that moment, like David's out in the hallway and it's in the hallway as Carrie and they're both running and dashing towards each other. He's got like the blue electricity. It's kind of got like a little bit of its black like essence as well as like a red essence, and they both collide. And then like that rainbowish, I don't know what kind of effect that was, but when like David's kind of flying back, you see it kind of vibrate throughout the hallway. It's like, I don't know what you call it, like almost like the same look as you'd see when a bubble, like that kind of like rainbowish reflection off of it. That's what you kind of see in the hallway. It's like that. Just this show does an amazing job. I don't give it enough credit. It's like how amazing its special effects are and just how trippy they can be. That was I was like, ah. And what's so sad about that situation is it lands inside of Oliver's body, just as he remembers Melanie too. So I'm not too surprised though, because I thought that was the ultimate goal anyway. Because out of anyone, we don't really 100% know what Farouk's powers are. I'm assuming it is a psychic, considering what it does and everything. It seems like it is a psychic, especially because like it was able to knock, Clark dude like most of the way down the hallway. So I can only assume it seems like that's where it's kind of been tailored, that's what its ability is. So I was like, it seemed like, Oliver would make the perfect host anyway, just because he is kind of like that too. So like I said, it's such a sad moment where it's just like, it wasn't even like a full-on victory, which I won't lie to you, I'm kind of happy about. Because for one, I love Aubrey Plaza as this thing, like this parasite Farouk. I really like that. And just even the fact is that she's always kind of like, it's even interesting because when she's in Oliver's head, she has a very different look. I mean, to be fair, she always had a different look from time to time, but usually she kind of kept a similar look to a certain degree. But it's like she looks kind of like she's like especially her attire kind of reminds me of like someone like a lady's attire from like the 50s or something like that. I don't know how to really phrase it. Just how she dresses and acts, like not necessarily acts, but the way she dressed was very different. And maybe it's just because she was in Oliver's head. I think because it pulls from stuff that's inside of your own brain and subconscious to kind of pick its particular form. I mean, like I'm still trying to understand why specifically Lenny. I'm not going to complain about it because it means I get to see more Aubrey Plaza playing this character. I think she does an amazing job, and it's just like so twisted. And I love that effect of like, I always love it when you have like a normal voice and an evil voice at the same time overlapping each other. So sometimes you hear her talking and at the same time you hear it talking, and I was like, ah. But dude, it seems like the perfect body, and it just got out of there just in time. Especially because it's the whole situation's even sadder, not just because he's remembering her, but the fact that she asked him out on a date and everything, because she was like, he may not remember me. She was basically even going like, oh, you remind me of someone. She's like, your wife? And he's like, no, but I can't quite place it. Other things that happen, it does seem that Carrie are good again. Obviously, I'm sure she was scared, because she was still somewhere inside of her head when he did that. So when Farouk attacked him, so it was like she was still pissed out because it's like, you left me. No matter what your excuses are, you left me. But seems like they're good now. Being afraid that something might have happened to him was enough to kind of push that. I'm sure I'll push that along. So. But obviously, where the episode ends, obviously we see, I'll get to that end, but where it ends is obviously we see Oliver and then Lenny. I like the, kind of just, like I said, I don't really nerd out about like camera tricks and stuff like that, but I do appreciate it. Just like, I was wondering if they were going to do it, and they do it. It's like, it's a pan, like the camera's right in front of, Oliver while he's driving, and then it slides over turns, and then like, as you go over, you see like, Lenny's hand come out the window like that, and and you see her sitting in the passenger seat. I'm like, that's pretty cool that you did it like that. You made it's such a seamless transition too. It's like, oh, I'm so envious that people are able to do that. That's so amazing. But now it does seem like they're going after David's dad. It seems like they might have an idea. Probably like before it left David's head, it kind of got a clearer picture of like, oh, I know exactly where to start. I mean, now like, at the very least, it may not be as powerful because it's not in David's head anymore, but at the very least, Oliver's very powerful in his own right. It makes you wonder, too, does that mean it applies to every other mutant as well? Because the fact is that this thing can, like, obviously, it feeds off of power because it was feeding off of David's, but is that what it does? Well, like, for instance, when it was inside of Carrie, was it feeding off her mutant abilities? Or when it was in Sid's head, was it feeding off her mutant abilities to create its own power? I'm very curious about that. Or is it just psychic energy it kind of feeds off? So is it like can it only feed off of people like David and Oliver? Very interesting question, but it's like, huh. But at the same time, like, at the end, we also found out we found out that Clark's husband is actually part of the division too. It's like, I would assume he knows that, but, essentially, it seemed like they were originally going to like drop some bomb or something on Summerland, but they kind of backed down once they heard about this whole Farouk situation, which Sid kind of broke the news and everything. Obviously, Melanie didn't trust him and everything, so it's like, I don't want to work with them on this. Which to me, my brain immediately goes like most things, this is going to be a situation where they're trying to get to Farouk before anyone else. Obviously, Summerland's going to want to try and destroy Farouk. Obviously, the government's going to want to take Farouk, examine it, and find out how it works and ticks, and maybe it'll be the key to dealing with the scourge that is mutants. Because that's a conversation that came up in this episode. It really hasn't really popped up until now, but obviously that's a big thing in the X-Men universe. It's like mutants versus humans. It's like humanity being like, you guys are like, have powers, you're monsters, you're literally, well, in Clark's mind, it's like, you're gods amongst men. And so it's like, how do we, we have to keep you in line, because obviously at one point you say you want to have regular lives, love and everything, but who's to say you want to eventually decide that you don't want to listen to us anymore? Which is like, why should they have to necessarily, that's such a weird thing to say, because it's like, even though they have powers and everything, they're still human to a certain degree, but there's always that degree of separation, because it's like, some mutants obviously have like Magneto and everything, thinking like they're better than humans. It's like, we're not humans, we're obviously mutants are in a different, more superior class, while other people are just kind of like, I'm sure other people look like, we're just like you. Yeah, we have abilities and everything, but that doesn't change the fact that we feel, we hurt, we love just the same as any other person, except you have to, as you look in David's case, has the power to just do a lot of damage, do a lot of things. But so you can see like the concern there and everything. But I get the feeling that that's what the long run is going to be, because David wants to kind of join forces. It's like telling Clark, "Hey, talk to Division 3. We need to work together for something like this, because this thing is super powerful. It's super ancient, so it's not going to be the easiest thing to deal with. But we need to come together to deal with this thing." Now, whether they're, like I said, whether their loyalties are 100% like, "Oh, we'll help you and everything," or not, we'll just have to wait and see. There was that thing at the very, very end where there's like an orb or something that kind of pops up, and David's like, "Oh, what is this? Is this something? What's up with this?" And then it sucks him into it, and then like you had Sid running off to tell somebody, but it's like either that was a Division 3 thing, because it's like, yeah, you're very dangerous. Yeah, that thing might be outside of you, but at the very least, we still need you under wraps so that we can make sure that you're okay. Because it does beg the question, like, obviously this is a type of situation where I feel like, I don't know if I know this storyline from X-Men in general or something, or maybe it's something similar to X-Men, but like mutants actually helping him out, because obviously we saw Walter was a mutant and he was helping out Division 3. So it's like, what other mutants do they have under the belt? Because it's like, oh, we're contracted mutants that exist. It makes you wonder, is it going to be like mutants that are self-hating, or is it mutants who are just like, no, we're here because it's like, because working with the government is a lot easier than always being on the run, worried about them coming after us, that type of situation? Or is it just because they believe in the cause? That's kind of going back to what I was saying about self-hating mutants. I don't know. I'm very interested to understand why someone like Walter did work with him, because we never really got too much detail about him, because Melanie was like, I know who he is, and it's like, what, he used to be part of this and everything, but then she never really went into details. So maybe bad blood between him and Oliver. I don't know. Or maybe that was something else. Maybe it's something connected to David's dad, because I'm sure now that this thing is out, maybe this thing has had to been sending out some like psychic waves, so that David's dad probably has been picking up on like, okay, so what the hell, this thing, I can feel it. It's on the way of returning. I'm very, well, I'll kind of get to that in a second, but it's like, I'm very, like, just a very fantastic episode. I'm really sad that it's over already, because I found out like a little while back that obviously this was only going to be 8 episodes, but man, this is just such a good episode, and I just don't, I hate that I have to wait a long time to find out more, especially because of what things ended up. But the point is, I was trying to say is like, I'm thinking maybe David's dad has something to do with that, or maybe there's another group. Because a thing I was about to get into is like, for 2 things I want to see, because I hope this gets renewed for a second season. I think I feel like I don't have to worry about it, because like when I've heard people talk about the show, I've heard nothing but positive things. I feel like even people who aren't even really into like superhero TV shows are into the show, because it's not like your typical superhero TV show. It has this weird, out of order, trippy, psychedelic like format on its own. I don't think I've ever seen a TV show like this. I don't think I've ever seen a movie like this. I'm sure there's certain things you could compare to. Oh, it's like this and that. That's fine and dandy, but I don't think there's anything I've ever watched that really. It just makes it stand out. And I think even if you're not into superhero TV shows, you should really be into this one, because it's like, it's so weird and out there that you can't help but be fascinated, especially with the whole mystery element of like, what's wrong? What's going on? Is David really crazy, or is there more to this? Which is something I'm very curious to find out in season 2. Like, I want them to keep that psychedelic, like, aspect of the show. And I want to see that be a continuation. The fact of the matter is, it's sad to say, but I kind of want David to be a little crazy. I know it's really messed up to say that, but I think that makes such an interesting and compelling thing, because it's like, okay, he has to worry about, he has all this power, and he thought it was just Farouk, because that was a conversation too, because he's like, are you like my shadow limb? What will I be like without you? And what if he ends up finding out, like, holy crap, because the question is he crazy? Maybe Farouk is making him crazy, but maybe all the time Farouk spit inside of his head, it fractured his psyche to the point that he is kind of crazy. Like, as we saw last week's episode, I was bringing it up, how he created the other Davids, like on the more logical side of your brain. I want to see if more of that pops up in like a future season, like make it so that his different sides of his brain kind of take on the form of other Davids, and he has to balance that. Like, everyone thinks he's just being crazy, but it's just his brain compensating for the fact that maybe his psyche's broken, or he has so much psychic power that it needs a form to kind of like, I don't know what the right word would be, kind of stay stable, or like, as I brought up earlier in the season, like why I think he's called Legion is because of the way his power might work, and the fact is he has to adapt different things inside of his head, maybe personalities or people inside of his head to represent a fraction of his power. To kind of maybe, for example, split his brain into 10 different people and make each one of those different people control one of the specific abilities. Like, oh, your telekinesis, your telepathy, your teleportation, whatever the case may be. So, like I said, I don't know because I haven't looked into anything as explained. Because to me, I don't remember. Like I said, I'll reiterate. I don't remember if that's something I heard or whether that's something I read one time. Because I don't think I've ever really read into Legion, but that might have been something I picked up, or maybe it's me taking what. Because I know it's the concept of like a manga I read a long time ago. Never read. It was like this manga called Change 123. Really quickly, it's basically a girl who was trained by like her father or something to learn martial arts, but basically for her to become a master of all the different martial arts, she literally created 4 different personalities, each one a master at one of the respective martial arts she was learning. It was just how her brain compensated for all the harsh training she was pushed through. So that, I think I'm taking that concept and I'm pushing it towards the show, hence the name with the, name like Legion. I don't know. I could be wrong, and maybe I did hear it from somebody. So I do hope it keeps up that angle, because it's like, I think that's one of the most compelling things about the show. Like, is David crazy or not? And I think they could really elaborate that on, because they have no choice but to kind of elaborate on it more next season with Farouk out of his head. So I'd also love to learn a little bit more about Farouk too, to find out what that's all about. Find out more about him, because that was like, his name kept being thrown around since last episode, but we still don't know exactly who he is, where this all started, why he has such a problem. Obviously, he wants to be kind of like a god. He wants to raise himself up to have the powers of a god, essentially. So I was like I said, because even like one of the only powerful mutants I'm aware of that exist in the X-Men, amongst the X-Men, is Apocalypse. But even then, I've never seen the movie Apocalypse, so I don't know if I'm familiar with him. I remember I brought that up in a past episode. I don't remember if I cut that out or not, but if not, it's there right now. So, I don't think this show's gonna go as far as introducing Sentinels and stuff like that. I don't know. Like, maybe they'll decide to. I feel like it's gonna. It seems like this show seems. I mean, no telling what they could do in the future, like, but so far it seems very grounded. That's the other thing. I was wondering something else too. Is like, obviously we only focus on the main cast this season. I'd be interested to kind of focus on the other people at Summerland, tap into the other people, even if it's just like one-shot mutants. I'm very interested to see how the format of this show changes going forward. Like I said, keeping that psychedelic kind of aspect to it. I would just be very interested to see what they do with a second season of this, and I'm sure they will continue to blow me as well as everyone. You know what I mean, for that to sound the way. Blow our expectations away is kind of what I was going, and then I turned into a 5-year-old kid laughing at fart jokes just in that moment. Just. That's I'm not cutting that out. That's staying in, because that was just I did not intentionally pause like that. That was messed up. Nevertheless, just fantastic. I will admit I kind of wanted a little bit more with David and Farouk's fight, but obviously that's going to be a build up, like a real of epic proportions type of situation though. But for now, that's a nice fresh start, because David's just kind of really getting control of his body for the first time in decades. I mean, in his entire life. So very interested also to see what happens with his sister Amy, like what happens to their whole life, especially if they're working with Division 3. I mean, granted, I don't think that relationship's going to last long. Like I said, it depends on if they're behind that whole David being locked up in that orb thing or not, which we'll kind of have to see. I don't know how, like I said, it's weird with all the technology, because it's like, I don't know, I feel like that might not be like Division 3 technology, and maybe we'll find out about other places, other people, other mutant groups. Obviously this is Summerland. Maybe we'll find out about other people, like for example, we already know David's dad must be part of some group, must be, hint hint, wink wink, nudge nudge. Like I said, they still haven't brought up who his dad is. They've alluded to it, but I don't know, next season I'll won't beat around it, but obviously, yeah, I'm just, it makes you wonder how far along his group is, essentially. It's like, we know his group, he has a group, and it's like, how far along are they? There are a lot of people, there are low people. Like, it's a situation where it's like, even though this is connected to Fox and everything, and obviously they have all the rights to the mutants, I doubt we'll see big name mutants like Logan, Wolverine, and Cyclops and people like that. And if we did, it'd probably be. I feel like they'd have to probably kind of do what they do in the movies and everything. Like it depends. Like I said, it all comes down to where the timeline takes place too. So, but nevertheless, I've been rambling on and on and off. Just such a good episode. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.